Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Mr Speaker, I'm delighted to stand and join many others from across the political spectrum who are speaking in support of the Human-Assisted Reproductive Technology Storage Amendment Bill, which I understand, Mr Speaker, has been referred or is proposed to be referred to the Health Select Committee. And although I'm pleased to be supporting it because of the content of the bill, I'm particularly pleased that this is proposed to be referred to the Health Select Committee because it will be very interesting to all members of the committee. We've already had the member who resumed her seat, Dr Jackie Blue, is a member of the Health Select Committee. Kevin Haigh has also spoken in this debate, and I'm sure that many members of it, Mr Speaker, you yourself, if I may refer to you and include you in the debate, at your acknowledgement, you yourself, Mr Speaker, are part of the Health Select Committee, and I'm sure that you would agree that all members will find this amendment and the issue very interesting. I have to say there's a downside of this bill being referred to the Health Select Committee, and that is that the National Party members, Dr Paul Hutchison, Mr Eric Roy, Dr Jackie Blue, Nicky Wagner and Michael Woodhouse, will have yet another excuse to deny my colleague Winnie Laban the opportunity to have her aged care inquiry accepted by the Select Committee. And Mr Speaker, frankly, that is very frustrating, not just for Lunamau Winnie Laban. It's also very frustrating for the Labour Select Committee members, for the Green Party Select Committee member and for the general public. We know that there are some very serious issues in aged care around the country. On an almost daily basis, we are now getting serious complaints about the quality of care, about the training that is given to caregivers, about all sorts of issues. This is a first reading speech. Michael, page a day, standing orders. I'd recommend it to any brand new member who thinks they know standing orders better than the Speaker, because Mr Woodhouse, you've just demonstrated yet again that you don't. So the Health Select Committee will have yet again another excuse for them not to look at these issues, because the Human-Assisted Reproductive Technology Storage Amendment Bill is likely, from the indications of the speeches that have already been given, to be referred to our Select Committee. So I want to say to my colleague Winnie Laban that she needs to persist with that. She's getting overwhelming support from the public about the need to have an aged care inquiry. And I'm sure that, given that I think every single party has spoken in support of this bill, that it isn't going to take a great deal of time of our Select Committee, and we should be able to move back to the more pressing issue of the aged care inquiry very early on in the new year. Mr Speaker, Kevin Haigh spoke on this bill early on and referred to the deep emotions that surround these issues. He talked about the very complex medical and legal issues that surround the storage of sperm, of eggs and embryos, and I can only wholeheartedly agree with him. This is not a straightforward issue that individual members of Parliament and their parties are just for or against. There are a range of both emotional, medical and legal issues that we need to consider with a lot of caution, with a lot of care, but also with a lot of sensitivity to the couples who are facing infertility, who Dr Jackie Blue referred to in her contribution. And in my view, she did that in a very sensitive and considered way and really reflected the views of those couples in relation to the issues that will be before the Select Committee. But Mr Speaker, this bill does just really a technical tidy-up. But for many couples and for many people who submitted to the original legislation, this will raise again those emotions for them. So I am certainly prepared on behalf of the Labour team on the Select Committee to give our commitment to ensuring that there are no games played with these issues, that we do consider them carefully and cautiously. But also, because this bill is quite a small and technical bill, I do hope that we can proceed with it at a reasonably rapid pace, rather than trying to drag up issues which may be related but are really outside the scope of this bill. It is quite narrow. What the Minister's advisers have clearly alerted him to is a potential legal problem. My understanding from listening to the earlier contributions is that there hasn't been a legal challenge, but in the same way as IRD can find any number of potential legal challenges to the tax system, the Minister of Justice has been alerted to a potential legal challenge in respect of the Human Assisted Reproductive Technology Act of 2004, and that is in relation to how long sperm and eggs and embryos are able to be stored. The issue boils down to this, Mr. Speaker: when does the clock start ticking? The legislation says that they can only be stored for 10 years, and the legislation came into force in 2004. Is that the day the clock starts ticking on that 10-year storage length of time, or does it take into account the 1, 2, or maybe 9.5 years that there have already been storage in relation to the sperm, the eggs and the embryos prior to the Heart Act coming into force in 2004? That's the question that this bill seeks to address beyond any doubt, so there cannot be a legal challenge to the legislation. And Mr. Speaker, I am very confident, because I was in Parliament when those earlier debates occurred. I am very confident that the Select Committee members did not intend there to be any challenge to the length of storage time. And I want to particularly commend my friend and former colleague Di Yates, a Member of Parliament from Waikato, who was very passionate about this issue, very committed to its progress in terms of legislative protection, but who also understood very well the detail of it. I'm sure that she will be of great assistance to the Select Committee if we wish to look at what Parliament intended during the passing of the 2004 legislation and what the Minister has now drawn to the attention of Parliament, and that is the potential legal challenge over the storage time. What I don't want to have occur is for those deep emotional and complex medical and legal issues to muddy the waters of what this Parliament has indicated is a very straightforward, not correction, but clarification of the original intent of the legislation. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased that the Minister has chosen to introduce this legislation. It's not at all clear that he did so on the basis of the advice from his officials, or if indeed the advisory committee that is set up in section 35 of the Heart Act of 2004 actually gave that advice. I didn't hear the Minister allude to that in his introductory comments. But if the advisory committee didn't give that advice, and if in fact the Minister is acting solely on the advice of his officials, then I would say that that advisory committee would be feeling a little shortchanged. It's set up under the Act. It's set up under the primary legislation that we're proposing to amend tonight. It's an advisory committee with functions that are laid out in section 35. The membership is described in section 34, part 4, A to G. So this is not a committee that's set up at the whim of a minister. It's set up by the decree of our Parliament under the primary legislation. So I would be very interested for one of the first questions the Select Committee to ask is, was this amendment bill introduced on the advice of the Advisory Committee, or was it introduced on the advice of the Ministry of Justice? In any regard, it is an important clarification to make, Mr. Speaker. I look forward to you and I being part of the Select Committee deliberations in the very near future.